What are ND filters? Why do you need them for your DJI Action 2? What difference do they make? And more importantly, how can you win some? So many questions, but you've come to the right place because I've got all the answers. So don't go away. Hey guys, Mike here and welcome back to the channel. Now, when it comes to ND filters, I must admit I've always had my head in the sand. I didn't fully understand what they were, thought it sounded too fancy and too complicated, and thought, nah, I don't need them. But I've watched so many videos on them for both standard cameras like my DSLR and also for cameras on drones and action cameras that I thought they were worth trying out. Now, I'm very lucky because Freewell, a company that specializes in making ND filters for a range of devices, reached out and sent me some of theirs to try. So I did, and I'm pretty impressed. So in this video, I'll give you a full rundown on what they are, how to use them, the results you can get, and I'll give this set away to one lucky viewer. So make sure you stick around so you can find out how you can win them. I'll also put links down below if you want to jump in and check them out yourself. First up, what are neutral density or ND filters? If you know all about this stuff and you just want to jump to the review of these ND filters, then jump forward to the time on the screen now. So, ND filters, put very simply, block the amount of light coming into your camera. I'll explain why you'd want to do this shortly. So essentially, and if you've watched other videos on this, then you know the cliche that's coming. Essentially, they are like sunglasses for your camera. Now, before I get into more detail, I also want to touch on the name because I haven't heard anyone else in any video I've watched on the topic explain what it means. And to be honest, that's one of the things that put me off. It's stupid, I know, but neutral density filters? Sounds a bit technical, and maybe it's just for the professionals. Anyway, let's break it down. Now we know these things, essentially dark pieces of glass, block or reduce the amount of light getting into the camera. That's the density bit. It increases the density, or more correctly, reduces the light intensity of light reaching the camera's sensor. And it does this without affecting the color of the light reaching the camera. Therefore, it is color neutral, hence the name neutral density filters. Not so complicated after all, right? I wish someone had just explained that to me a little bit earlier, as I might not have been quite so put off. Right, now that that's out of the way, let's talk very briefly about why you'd want to use them. So in cinematography, there's a principle called the 180-degree rule, and basically it's to do with your frame rate and shutter speed. In order for video footage to look really nice to the eye, you want to have a little bit of motion blur in it. It kind of mimics what the human eye naturally sees. To get this, the shutter speed should be double your frame rate. So if you shoot, for example, at 30 frames per second, to get that natural look, your shutter speed should be 1/60th of a second. If you shoot in 24 frames a second, the shutter speed should be 1/48th of a second, and so on. The problem with modern day cameras with fixed apertures, like the camera on the Action 2 and most other action cameras, is that in order to get the proper exposure, in other words, not too bright or too dark, the camera automatically adjusts the shutter speed, among other things, to compensate. If you're shooting in bright sunlight and you follow the 180-degree rule, there will be way too much light getting onto your camera sensor and your footage will look way overexposed and blown out. So normally the camera will automatically adjust the shutter speed and push it up really high to limit the amount of light getting to your sensor so the image is correctly exposed. Now the trouble with that is whilst your footage is now exposed correctly, the high shutter speed makes the footage look very jittery and not pleasant to watch. You see where I'm going with this? Exactly. That's where ND filters come in. Using ND filters limits the amount of light hitting your sensor, which then allows you to set your shutter speed to the appropriate amount so you can follow the 180-degree rule and get your natural looking motion blur in your footage. And that's why they come in different strengths. You select the one based on how bright the conditions are that you're filming in. The higher the number of the ND filter, the more light it's going to block. So that's the explanation of what ND filters are. Now let's get onto these ones specifically. So as I said, Freewell reached out and sent me 3 packs of filters. This one, what they call their standard day 4 pack, which not surprisingly has 4 different ND filters, their bright day pack, and last but not least, the long exposure ND 1000 filter. Today we're just going to talk about the standard and bright day packs, and I'll come back at another time and talk about the long exposure filter. And don't forget to stick around and I'll explain what you can do to go into the draw to win this pack. So Freewell are well known for making a large range of high quality ND filters for a wide variety of cameras, including drones and action cameras. This standard day pack is one of the most popular because it has a range of filters that will suit you for almost every situation. This kit includes an ND8, an ND16, an ND32 and a CPL filter. The Bright Day pack comes with an ND8PL, an ND16PL, an ND32PL and an ND64PL. The ND8, 16 and 32 are standard ND filters, and the CPL filter is a circular polarized lens which is used when you want to reduce glare from reflective surfaces such as bodies of water or even glass windows. And the ND-PL filters are the best of both worlds. They combine a standard PL filter with a circular polarized lens. With both the CPL filter and the ND-PL filters, you can adjust the strength of the polarizing effect by moving the circular adjustment ring on the outside of the filter. Each pack comes in a purpose-built case to store them in, a filter guide that explains what situations each of the filters are good for, a cloth to keep them clean, a couple of stickers, and a card that has a scannable QR code that takes you to some tutorials where you can access heaps of hints and tips about the filters and other filmmaking or photography advice. Now I'll get into what do you use and when do you use them, but before I do that, I just wanted to point out a few things about the filters themselves. First of all, they're really simple to use. They're magnetic and simply attach, well, magnetically to the front of the Action 2 camera. They have to be orientated a certain way, so if you're putting it on the wrong way, you get that familiar sort of repulse effect where you're trying to put a magnet somewhere it doesn't want to go. On two of the corners are the magnets. You can see them here on the back of the filters. On the other two corners there are holes on the filter housing, one for the microphone and one for the front LED of the camera. In terms of the magnetic strength, they do feel pretty solid, and under reasonable use you should have no problems at all, but if the camera is subject to a shock, they will fall off. They're pretty tough though, and according to Freewell are made from 16 layers of premium multi-coated optical glass and are scratch resistant, dust proof and oil proof. Pretty impressive. Now I have a clear lens protector on my Action 2 and the filters fit just fine with no issues at all. However, if you're using cases for your Action 2 like these ones from Small Rig, then the filters don't really attach, so I would not recommend using them if you're using the cases. So a super high quality and useful set of filters. But what do you use and when do you use them? Well, that does take a little bit of trial and error and experience, although in the handy little guide that comes with the filters, Freewell do give you some guidance. Obviously, the lower the number, the less blocking it's going to do, and the higher the number means that it will block more light from entering the camera. For example, they say the ND8 is useful in partially cloudy daylight conditions through to the ND32 for use in very bright sunlight conditions. Now, the key thing when you're using these on your Action 2 is you need to put the camera into Pro mode. This is where you can set your frame rate and shutter speed. So do that first and then pop on a filter. The good thing about using them on the Action 2 versus something like a drone is that once you have set your preferred frame rate and shutter speed, you can pop on a filter to see the result. And if it looks too dark for you, then you can easily change it before starting filming. So let's look at some examples of the effect that some of these filters have. And don't forget to stick around to go in the draw to win some yourself. When I filmed this, it was a pretty bright day, but not a lot of clouds in the sky. I had the camera set at 24 frames a second and the shutter speed at 1/50th of a second. And what we see here really comes as no surprise. The stronger the filter, the less light hitting the sensor and the darker the image. Now in these scenes, there's not really a great deal of action or movement anyway, so the 180-degree rule with regard to motion blur didn't really apply. However, the other reason for using ND filters in this case is to help get a better exposed image with my frame rate and shutter speed locked. And you can see there's a real sweet spot where the image just looks better. The exposure is good and the colors are a bit more saturated. So my advice is just experiment and you'll get to know what to use and when. So all up, these are a great quality set of ND filters and are perfect for your DJI Action 2, especially if you're looking to do things like time lapses or try your hand at making more cinematic videos. In terms of pricing, both the standard pack and the Bright Day pack come in at around $69.99 each, or you can buy individual filters for $19.99 each. I'll put links down below so you can check them out for yourself. Once again, I'm really thankful to Freewell for sending these filters out for me to try. And in the spirit of paying it forward, I'm going to give the standard day 4-pack away to one of you. To go in the draw to win this set, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel and then make a comment in the section below, making sure you put hashtag Freewell somewhere in your comment. I'll use an online program designed for this type of competition to go through all of the qualifying comments and select one at random. I'm going to leave the giveaway open for 1 week from the time of posting this video, and when it's closed, I'll do the draw, post the results in the community tab, and also reach out through the YouTube comments as well, so I can get address details and send them off. Now, I've been reviewing a bunch of accessories for the DJI Action 2 lately, like the small rig cases and protective covers for the lens and screen. So click on the links on screen now and I'll see you over there. Cheers guys.